Luxiha Ramalingam, இத்தாலி நாட்டிலிருந்து இணைந்திருக்கின்றார். லக்ஷ்மி ராமலிங்கம் தமிழருக்கான கண்ணியமான தீர்வென இந்தியா முன்வைக்கும் 13வது திருத்தச் சட்டம் தமிழருக்கான அரசியல் இருப்பையோ தீர்வையோ தர முடியாது என்ற தலைப்பில் உரையாற்றுவார்.
I would now like to ask Ms. Luxiha Ramalingam, activist, to talk on the failure of the 13th Amendment to meet the demands put forward by Tamils and plead to recognise as people who lack on a political status.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'll be talking about the failure of the 13th Amendment in meeting Ulam Tamil's right to self-rule and the plea to recognize as people who are unable to determine their political status. The month of May marks the peak of the Ulam Tamil genocide. Paradoxically, on this month falls also the International Week of Solidarity with the people of non-self-governing territories. The UN defines these as territories whose people have not yet attained a full measure of self-governance. However, the right of Ulam Tamils of self-governance was ripped away with the establishment of the constitution of a unitary constitution in 1972, a constitution that mirrors the singular supremacy and annihilation of Ulam Tamils and their identity. In the 1972 constitution, Sri Lanka managed to get rid of the basic principles that guaranteed the rule of law, depriving judiciary independence. And in 1978, by delegating most of the powers to the president, they guaranteed them an exclusive immunity. The constitution was far from representing democracy and more closer to a constitutional dictatorship. In a post-war era, where the government keeps centralizing power in the president's hands under a unitary constitution, Ulam Tamils are left with no margin for their fight for self-determination. Article 2 of the Sri Lankan Constitution from 1978 till date states the same. The Republic of Sri Lanka is a unitary state. Therefore, in principle, in an arena dominated by singular Buddhist nationalism, within a unitary state, any form of amendment, being it the most benevolent to the existing unitary constitution, cannot be a solution. India, in the pre- and post-war era, has undeniably shaped the course of Tamilulam's history. After the end of the armed struggle, to maintain and enhance its geopolitical interest over its rival China, they decided to leverage the 13th Amendment. Despite the geographical location and its cultural affinity, they've always acted according to their own interests and neglected the possible consequences of their decision. India's presumption that the 13th Amendment is the basis for a political solution was proven wrong in 1987. And once again, history is repeating itself. The needs of the world's biggest democracy to promote the 13th Amendment after decades should be read between the lines. The influence of other rival countries in the Indo-Pacific Ocean is feared as a possible fireback against India and consequent loss of geopolitical advantage on Sri Lanka. The strategic position and natural resources of the island have always been a key attraction to many countries. And in order to maintain these, India's leverage of the 13th Amendment is a wake-up call that Ulam Tamils have been used as pawns to play this geopolitical gamble. After the Indo-Lanka Accord in 1987, signed by the President J.R. Jayawardena and then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, during which no Tamil representatives were involved, the 13th Amendment and Provincial Council Act was introduced to create a deceptive political platform to pretend to safeguard Tamilulam and its people. But the 13th Amendment is far from fulfilling the objectives and requests of Ulam Tamils. Under the 13th Amendment, provincial regions will be created and power will be fallaciously devolved to them. Despite the system constituting of a subordinate structure, the sole person to detain real executive powers will be the provincial governors, who unsurprisingly is elected directly by the president himself. Meanwhile, the other members who are elected by the people will have no executive power or any power to make any decisions. They will be bound by the amendment to serve the president and the president-appointed governor, and not the people, becoming only administrative fillers of this broken system. The whole mechanism of provincial system fails to share executive power with the Tamil nation, as it will continue to reside in the hands of the Sinhalese central government, under a constitution that accepts only a unitary state. Therefore, the 13th Amendment fails in principle. It fails in principle to address the central issue being Tamils having their own nation and right to sovereignty. Moreover, under the Provincial Council Act, there will be 9 provinces, and the Tamil populated northern and eastern provinces will be merged. And once again, the representation of Tamil people will be nullified and structurally neglected, as no members of the provincial system will have the power to represent the demands of Ulam Tamils in a Sinhalese unitary state. Although the Indian Sri Lankan propaganda claims that the 13th Amendment will decentralize power and delegate it more to the provinces, the above-mentioned breakdown clearly shows how the system fails to devolve power to the Ulam Tamils. The 13th Amendment will guarantee the Sinhalese state to control and perpetrate the genocide against Ulam Tamils more efficiently than before. Not only this devolution of power to the provinces fails as a system, but it also refuses to address the main issue, being Tamils having their own sovereignty and right to self-determination. Given the 4 principles of the Timbu Declaration that speaks the will of the Tamil people, none of them have been addressed, and none of them can be addressed under a unitary state. The amendment binds the Ulam Tamil into a political limbo, denying them the right to sit as equals with the Sinhalese people and determine the political structure within which the 2 nations may live in equality. Under the control of a unitary Sri Lankan state, Ulam Tamils will never have their own nation, their territorial integrity, their sovereignty, and their right to self-governance. The solution for Ulam Tamils lies in recognizing their inalienable right to self-determination by guaranteeing the right to self-governance, including but not limited to the control over financial sectors, economic affairs, judicial affairs, development sectors, and the power over the sea and land of the traditional homeland, Tamilulam.